The purpose of this video is to provide a demonstration on how to analyze data sets with tables. Let's go ahead and start with our ETF worksheet, and I believe that you can find that in the eCollege material online in chapter number 15. The first thing that we want to do with our worksheet is actually turn it into a table. So if you'll go ahead and click anywhere within the table, or within the worksheet itself, let's go ahead and click on the Insert tab and then click on Table. Notice that Excel is pretty smart here, and it's giving us an idea of what it expects the table to contain. In this case, it is right. The table is going to consist of cell A1 all the way through cell V764. So let's go ahead and click OK. So notice what it did. First thing that it did is that it placed drop-down arrows at the top of each one of our columns. In addition to that, a table is a unique set or range of data. Okay, so one of the ways that this differs is that previously we had 763 lines worth of data, and we still have those lines, and we all have A through V, so we have quite a few columns worth of data as well. But now, because this is a table, it's a unique set of data as compared to independent variables. Now that we have our table created, notice here up on the Design Tools tab for Table Tools, there are certain things that we can do. Notice that my table has a title called Table Number 3. If I want to resize the table, okay, and notice once again it's automatically selecting the information in the table, and click OK. That I'm not sure what it did there, to be quite honest with you, but I think it's kind of like the auto size. So if I were to click up here and double click, it automatically auto sizes all of the columns to the longest item within each column. Okay, we could summarize with a pivot table. We will look at that later. But in our example, we want to remove duplicates. Let's go ahead and click on the Remove Duplicates. Notice that once again it's for the entire table. It's looking at every single one of our columns, and let's click OK. And in our case, it said that there were no duplicates. But one of the things that oftentimes happens is that when you create a data set from multiple sources, sometimes you end up with multiple lines of the same information, and that isn't something that you generally want in a data set, because when you're sorting and accumulating and summarizing and performing calculations, you don't want to double the content that you have for any single item. So that's what the Remove Duplicates does. It removes any of the duplicate line items, and that can be a very valuable function. Okay, and so we can export this to some other programs. There's insert slicers. Perhaps we will work on that later. One of the other things that we can do is create different table styles for our table. And so notice in this case, when we're changing it, it looks like initially my table had the gray and the black hard-coded in. Let's go back to the home real quickly and go to the fill color, and if you click the drop down arrow, let's go ahead and click in No Fill. Now if we go back to our Design tab, if we click on the different table colors, it will automatically change the table colors. I'm going to click Undo because for some reason it looks like my row headers disappeared, so I don't want that to happen. Okay, now I can go back to the different table colors and change them as I wish. Okay, let's continue on by checking out some of the options that we have with the drop-down arrows. Notice on the fund name, if I click the drop-down arrow, notice every single line item is identified. Let's say that I don't want every single line item to be identified and that I want to identify only bond items. So I'm going to go to, notice some of the other options we have, sort from A to Z or Z to A. We'll look at those later. But let's say I want to filter on information contained within the fund name. So I'm going to click on the text filters, click on contains, and let's say I want to look for bond funds and click OK. Notice that I've drastically reduced the number of funds to only funds that have the word bond in them. But now let's say I want to further filter this for not just bond funds, but for funds that contain also long, the term long, or long-term bond funds. So I'm going to go through my filter, and once again I just clicked on the drop-down arrow, I clicked on the text filter, and clicked on contains, and let's see, bond, and scroll down to the word contains and long and click OK. And there, notice in this case we have only 4 funds that contain the terms long and bond. Now that I've filtered that, it's pretty, let's say that I want to go back to my original list. I can simply click on the drop down arrow and click on clear filter from fund name, and it clears out. Okay, let's say that we want to do some more sorting and categorizing and filtering. Let's go over to the Morningstar category, and let's say that we want to identify funds that belong to certain categories. So let's go ahead and click our drop down arrow, and let's go ahead and once again deselect all. Let's say, and let's scroll down, and let's say that we want to identify long-term government bond funds and long-term bond funds, and click OK. So there we have all of the long-term bond and long-term government bond funds. But let's say that that's not quite good enough for what we want. So let's go ahead and scroll over. Now that we have our category selected, let's say that we want to identify the funds in order of biggest to smallest. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the 2013 return, and let's go ahead and say sort from largest to smallest and click OK. Excuse me. Okay, so now we have our list sorted in the order of highest return to the worst return for long-term bond and long-term government bond funds for the year of 2013. Let's say that we want even to narrow this down a little bit. Let's go ahead and click our drop-down arrow, and let's go to our number filters. Let's say that we want to look at funds that had a rate of return of greater than, and notice that our greater than was pretty bad. So we could click on a drop down arrow here, and let's say that anything greater than 12%. And there we have the top bond funds for that given year. Or other options, if we were to click on, once again, the number filter, and let's click, this top 10 is kind of neat. Let's say that we want to identify only the top 5 funds. Oh, that didn't seem to work very well. Let's go back and take off the top 5. I'm not sure why that didn't work. I think I will just hit undo And there we have it. We're back to our funds with a 2013 return of greater than 12%. One of the problems with putting on too many sorts and too many filters at any given time, if we have so much information available that sometimes we forget which of the columns that we've put our filters and sorts on. If we want to clear all of our filters all at one time, rather than going into the drop-down arrow for each one of the line items, and notice how the drop-down arrow changed, we can see that a filter has been applied here. And if we scroll over a little bit, we can see that we also filtered here as well. We filtered here and we sorted here. But if we want to get rid of the filters, we can simply go up to the Data tab and click on Clear All Filters. And it clears all of the filters at one time rather than doing it individually, column by column. Finally, one of the other items that we want to investigate a little bit further within tables is the calculation of formulas within a table. Let's go ahead and click on row number N. Go ahead and right click and click Insert. And notice that it automatically shifted everything over. And also notice that Excel is pretty smart. It identified a sequence of 3 items, and it anticipated that we were going to add the column that would be in this sequence. However, that is not the case. So let's just go ahead and overwrite that. And let's call that category, or cat space 2013 return. Now the formula that we're going to use is called the average if formula. And what we're going to do is we're going to, in this case, we want to compare the individual fund return with the 2013 return by individual fund with the category of funds that it belongs to. And the benefit of that is that we're going to be able to, fund by fund, find out whether or not each or which of these funds beat the average return for the category of which it belongs to. And we're going to use the average if formula to do that. Let's go ahead and click on our insert function icon. And notice here I have average if already up, but let's type that in. Average if, and hit return 2 times, and it pulls the function arguments box up. And in this case, let's go ahead and select, and let's go ahead and highlight G2 through just a little bit of G, and instead of G10 we want to have G764 because we have 764. Let's also go ahead and use our absolute referencing, so hit your F4 key around the G2 and the G764. The criteria that we are going to use is the category for which the fund belongs to. So let's just go ahead and click on G2, or let's go ahead and type in. And notice here that it's identifying the Morningstar category for us because, once again, it is a table and it's looking at that particular category within the table. So in this case, if we want to, we can leave this Morningstar category, or you can overwrite that just with G2, and the formula will automatically adjust as it copies down to the rest of the table. And then, so let's go ahead and leave it like that, even though our authors show that being a little bit different. And then our average range is going to be for the 2013 return. So let's go ahead and highlight a little bit of that 2013 return. And once again, instead of M12, I want M764. And once again, we want absolute referencing around these items of M2 to M764. And let's go ahead and click OK. And notice here that what happened was that within a table, because it is a table, it automatically calculates everything else for you. So that's kind of a really neat little feature when using a table. Okay, this is the extent to what our authors take us through. But one of the things that I kind of like is that notice here that now we've compared the 2013 return compared to the category average for each individual fund. One way that we could step this up just a little bit is let's go ahead and insert one more line item. And let's go ahead and call this one, let's call this the variance. Okay? And let's say equals the 2013 return minus the 2013 category return. Now then, because what this formula did was, notice for this very first fund, this first fund beat the category return by 80%. That's pretty good. The next one beat it by 86%. Now that we've done this, we could very easily do a filtering. Let's go ahead and click on the filter. Let's click on the number filter. And let's say top 10. And let's actually change this to top 25. And click OK. Here we have the top 25 performing funds in comparison to their Morningstar average. Okay? Another way that we could look at this is we could say number filters is greater than 0. So here we have a list of ETFs that exceeded the category average for the year of 2013. So once again, once you have the information within your table and you have the filters on, there's a lot of different things that you can do with that. Okay, that concludes the demonstration of working with tables. We will continue on with the next video of